go anywhere, Mark. He's the first person I'm introducing. He's just walked off. Thank you very much for coming along to Tontine this evening. Again, apologies for the lack of catering. With a slight change to the agenda, we will break once we get some pizzas and things arrived, just to give you a chance to grab something to eat, but we'll try and keep things moving. Hello to those of you joining us on the live stream as well. For those in the building, quick fire exits information. It is not as complicated as getting in here, is the good news. If the fire alarm does go off, it will be a real fire alarm, so we will be evacuating buildings. The fire exit is actually straight ahead out of these doors at the back on my left-hand side. If you follow any of the CivTech team or event organizers in a purple badge, that would be great. We'll do your section and then we'll break. Tonight we are also joined by one of our challenge sponsors, Neil Byers from SDS. So if you're interested in the SDS challenge, it's an opportunity in the Q&A time to be able to ask a few more questions of him. Otherwise, what we will be focusing on is the process, really the CivTech process this evening. We're going to talk a bit more about that and give you a sort of quick 1-minute intro videos from all of the challenges. But before we get into that, I'd just like to give Mark the opportunity to say a few words.
Thanks. Hi everybody. So anybody of you who know about CivTech will probably wonder why I'm about to say that I'm the program director, because for the last 4 years, it's been Alexander Holt. Well, after 3 complete cycles and 27 challenges, his second child is a challenge too far for him. So he's staying with us, and he's going to work really hard at strategic partnerships and emerging opportunities. But Colin Cook, who's the director, the digital director, had asked me to step up and take over. For the last, well, for all 3 of the accelerators up to now, I've been the head of the accelerator and one of the sort of backroom people. So I kind of know the territory. I just want to add on to something Barbara said. You know, please feel free to ask questions, but if it becomes detailed questions about the challenges themselves, we're going to have to refer you to asking it online, because of procurement rules, we have to make sure it's free and fair for everybody. And even though you've bothered to turn up here, it is actually a slight advantage for you. So what is CivTech? CivTech is, it says what it's doing there. It's driving daring and innovation in the public sector by collaboratively solving challenges, creating solutions that make people's lives better. It's as simple as that. But it came about by a number of us asking the same question about 4 or 5 years ago. And the question was kind of, in a world where just about every sector in society has been disrupted by technology or altered by technology — I don't particularly like the word disrupted, to be honest — you know, in almost incalculable ways, why was it that the largest sector in the world, the public sector, had largely not been touched by it? You know, why were there no public sector accelerators? Why were there no public sector open challenge systems? And could we possibly take these things into the public sector and adapt them and adopt them, keep to the true faith of them, but at the same time adapt them so that they would work within the structures that we have inside the public sector? So while everybody raves about the way we do procurement, and it's very different to the standard procurement system inside the public sector, we've not changed one word of the procurement regulations. It was just an insight that, in fact, those regulations are not rules. They're not laws. They're just guidelines. And actually, if you look at them and play with them and innovate within them, you can do some really amazing stuff. So we put this proposal to the Digital Directorate that maybe there's a way of doing it. And the first time we did it, we were quite prepared to absolutely fall flat on our faces, and it was going to be a disaster, we decided. But we were going to do it anyway. And it turned out to be a real success. So Rui, so Barbara is a challenge sponsor manager, and so is Rui. There's Rui up at the back. You know the numbers, don't you? So on most accelerators in the world, it's an 80% failure rate. 80% of the companies that go through accelerators do not do anything further than demo day. Ours is actually more or less exactly reversed, isn't it, of the numbers? And we've got real investment going through. I mean, what's the number at the moment?
So all the companies that have left CivTech.
It's all right, I have to do this because you haven't got a microphone on.
All the companies that have left CivTech, 27 companies, I think, outside of the first contract with CivTech, they have gotten up to £5.5 million in contracts, so with the first contract. So it's a platform for you to catapult your company.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about it is, while 2/3 of those contracts are from the public sector, only 1/3 of the value comes from the public sector. So these companies are making huge inroads into the private sector in terms of contracts and value of contracts as well. So it's a really good way of springboarding, particularly new companies, although we do not restrict anybody can propose a solution. It can be an individual, a team, a pre-start, a startup, an established company. We even have big companies going for it. Although in truth, and you know, I'll probably get murdered for saying this, but it's been in over 200 applications, I think we've only taken 2 large corporations through to the next stage, because the real innovation in this kind of area lies with the smaller companies. And we've got the proof of that now. You know, three very successful accelerators, 4, 11 challenges, extraordinary challenges, and again, congratulations to these people for putting it together. I shall take all the credit, of course. You know, yeah. So that's what we're doing. Rui and Barbara are going to take you through the process. But one thing I'd finally say is that there are thousands of accelerators in the world at the moment. I was involved. I was one of the key partners in the first ever one in Europe when there were just 5 in the world. There was Y Combinator, which was the original, you know, biggie out in Silicon Valley. Then there was Techstars. Techstars went from Boulder to New York. And when there were just 5, we did one in the northeast of England, which is now accepted as the first ever proper accelerator in Europe. Seed Camp used to claim it, and then a couple of years ago was they gracious and said, no, actually, we got there first. And what I saw were, if we were the 6th, they were very much of the true faith, if you like, the way that Y Combinator did it. Now, you've got thousands around the world, and in my opinion, most of them are not true accelerators at all. What we've tried to do with CivTech is keep to the faith as far as we could. Now, there are some things we can't do. We can't do what Y Combinator does, which is get you to code during the day and then meet the CEO of Apple in the evening. It doesn't quite work. We're not in Silicon Valley. But we can make adjustments for that kind of thing. So it is a roller coaster. It's really intense, but it's really well worth doing. And the company's performances are proving the case. And with that, it's time for food.
Yes. So what we'll do is we'll just take a brief 10 minutes. I'd ask you to grab something to eat, and napkins and things, and then bring it back through here, and we'll crack on with
yes, because we don't have a huge amount of time. We've got to be out by 8. Thank you, folks.
So thanks for bearing with us if you're joining us over the live stream. What we're going to do now is just have a run through of the CivTech process. Before I do that, can I get an indication from those in the room? Who is aware of the CivTech process? Is there anybody here who's either applied before or been through the process before? Okay, just a couple of hands. Okay. So the process starts with the CivTech team working with a range of different challenge sponsor organizations, such as SDS, on developing and defining the challenges that you may have read through on our wiki page, and really what might have brought you here today. There's been a significant amount of work that's gone in to get us to this point, and a lot of that work will be kind of captured in those wiki pages in terms of we've got the challenge description, but there might also be background information, etc., in there about the challenge. What we do is publish those challenges, and this time around we've published in a staggered launch. So the dates vary dependent upon the particular challenge that you are applying for. So make sure when you are completing any application, you check and double check the dates, particularly if you've been flicking between different challenges. There may well be different dates and different deadlines for different challenges. Effectively, we are selecting until about the middle of July. I'm going to have to bring my own laptop over. Sorry, until about the middle of August. I'll start that again. We are in our open call phase until about the middle of August, and then we go into a selection phase. And for each challenge, what we are doing is, in the first instance, shortlisting to 6. For the vast majority of challenges, we're shortlisting to up to 6 applications that we hold interviews for. Those interviews can be done either face-to-face or online. And really what we're trying to do is just get a bit more information about the team and the submission that you've entered at those interviews. From those interviews, we then select 3 companies that go into the exploration phase. Now, the exploration phase lasts 3 weeks, and for the exploration phase, there is a £3,000 contract per company. And during the exploration phase, you are working with you start immediately working with the challenge sponsor organization for the challenge that you've been selected for. You will have a main point of contact with a challenge sponsor team, somebody such as Neil, and that's an opportunity for you to find out more about the background and get into some of the detail about the challenge, but also to understand the stakeholders that are involved in the challenge area. And we're really pushing a big emphasis now on our CivTech challenges in the early stages of understanding the users. That's really important. We want to see submissions which are based on really solid understanding of user needs and on user research. But during that 3 weeks, you've got that opportunity to review the submission that you've submitted and develop it. And it might be that you are able to take what you've submitted and you're building on that. It might be during the exploration phase that you get new information and you're pivoting. We've had examples of both approaches being successful for companies that have been selected into the accelerator stage. The end of the exploration stage involves a pitch. Everybody gives a pitch to your challenge sponsor panel, and the pitch that the challenge sponsor selects is then put forward into the accelerator stage. The accelerator stage lasts roughly 15 weeks, and it is a £20,000 contract. And the aim of the accelerator stage is to develop a minimum viable product which gives your challenge sponsor a practical example, a practical, usable prototype of the solution that you're putting forward in a way which they can then make an informed decision about the pre-commercial stage. So in the accelerator stage, you are very much focused on developing a successful MVP, but it needs to be done gaining a further understanding of really what the needs and drivers for your challenge sponsor are, including understanding what kind of business case is going to need to be, what are the business case issues that your challenge sponsor needs to address in order for them to invest in the pre-commercial phase. There is a whole package of workshops that Mark mentioned in his introduction that has been built on the huge experience that he has in developing accelerator programs. And the value in those themselves, we've had really positive feedback from companies that have gone through that process, whether they are well-established, larger companies, or whether it is individuals setting up a business for the first time. The range of different expertise that's brought through those workshops across a range of different things, whether that is lean startup approaches or whether it is through some of the business model workshops. I'm thinking, Mark, of Talesh's. Yeah. Where you got people like the former head of finance for Virgin.
He was the head of investment at Virgin Group, and he also handled the Branson's money.
So we're bringing in people with a huge amount of different experience in terms of being able to build not just the product that's addressing the challenge sponsor's needs, but build that business that is then going to have those opportunities for multiple further clients afterwards. The end of the accelerator phase is finishes with Demo Day. And Demo Day was held last year at the EICC. We had 500 people attending from all across the public, private, investment sector, and it is an opportunity to showcase the work that's been done during the accelerator and also a launch pad for that next place that you're taking those products, whether that's building and cementing that relationship that you've already got with the challenge sponsor, but also looking at those second clients, who's going to be the next customer for that product. And it's a good opportunity, and we again got really good feedback from the companies that participated in the program so far. The pre-commercial phase itself, it varies. There is no guarantee of a pre-commercial contract through CivTech, through being successful and being selected to the CivTech Accelerator. I have to emphasize that. It is based on the product that you develop in the accelerator phase, meeting the needs of the challenge sponsor and having a viable business case associated with it. But the support that we put around both companies and the challenge sponsors means we have a very high success rate in securing those pre-commercial agreements between our challenge sponsors and our companies. And really from there, we've seen, and Rui mentioned the sort of examples of the kind of contract values companies have gone on to secure outside of the CivTech process. That's the evidence of the opportunity that is there. It's a proven process now. We're happy to answer any questions, but it's probably best to get through the challenge videos first of all. So we are going to have a Q&A session towards the end. Should I take some quick questions on the process beforehand? Okay. We could maybe do very quick questions if anybody have got any glaring questions about the process before we jump into the challenge videos.
When you talk about the workshops, do you mean that people on the accelerator are invited to workshops?
So if you are selected to the accelerator, there is a whole program of workshops, which are not just invited to, it's actually a part of the process of doing it. So it's expected that the companies participate. The accelerator is about much more than a period of time in which a company is sent off to go and develop the product and come back with it. It's about co-development of the product with not just your challenge sponsor. So we encourage people to be using the studio space, the physical studio space where the workshops are held, because we want the challenge sponsor and the company physically to be in the same spaces as regularly as possible. But it's also about the cross-pollination of ideas that you can get when you're in a space with lots of different other businesses, with different other skill sets and networks, etc. as well. It's a huge bit of the value in the accelerator. So yeah, the workshops are not just optional, they're actually a mandatory part of the participation in the accelerator process. Anything else on? Yep.
During the pre-commercial phase, is the sort of the support or the focus, is that around that initial revenue generation?
Sorry,
During the pre-commercial stage, is the support and the focus that companies get from CivTech, is that if you like focused around the revenue generation that you would get from that initial sponsor, or is that beyond that also new investment?
So the specific support that you get from CivTech at this stage is in brokering the pre-commercial agreement. So the income through the pre-commercial agreement is direct. The agreement that defines that is brokered by the CivTech team, supporting both the challenge sponsor and the company to reach a form of agreement which meets the needs of the parties. Quite often what we see as part of that is that challenge sponsors want to see companies that have proposals that have a wider revenue business plan that is viable, because they're looking at wanting to know that the products and the businesses they're investing in are going to scale and be sustainable. So not just in respect of that particular contract for the challenge sponsor, we have a wider interest in ensuring that you've addressed and thought about how you're going to be targeting that wider revenue generation. The reality is it varies from challenge to challenge, because you might have a product which is a long way from market at the start of that pre-commercial phase. You might have a product which is a lot closer to the market when we're negotiating that pre-commercial agreement. We just tailor it to meet the needs of the particular.
Yeah, I think we just need to be absolutely clear on most accelerators. When you get to demo day and you demonstrate your minimum viable product, you're looking for somebody to invest in you. Yeah. We're not, because if you think about it, I mean, there's an irony here, because most investors will be looking for a great product, a team that is trained up to grow a business and a business plan. And if you go through the accelerator properly, you'll have all those things. But actually, the funny thing is you won't need investment, because what that is about your challenge sponsor wanting you to develop the product further, and be it maybe rolling it out or taking it on to the next set of feature sets.
It's the opportunity to have that first blue chip client saying they're buying that product. So by the end of the process, you don't just have a product that's been developed for that challenge sponsor, but you've got that. It's been developed, they've rolled it out, and you can use that as the launch pad for.
And those figures there, the 3K, the 20K, and then the up to, they're not investments, they're contracts. And of course, again, investors want to see people with blue chip clients, with investors, and they never get them with startups. And we're putting possibly 11 startups on stage. I don't know. Last time it was about half startups and half established SMEs. It was about that, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an extraordinary opportunity in that sense. And what we've discovered is that You know, we thought investors would be rushing in on CivTech Beta, you know, the first one we did. And it turned out that actually the companies were going, no, we don't need investment. And of course, if you can hold off on an investment further down the line, you've got a more valuable proposition to play with, and they'll be even more keen to get you. Sorry, there was a question.
Sorry, you're just on the couple of slides, it's got the length of time and also the monetary value there. On pre-commercial, is there an expectation of the length of time?
No, so it is dependent upon what are the development needs for the product that is addressing the challenge. So we've had ones that have been relatively short, and then we have other ones, like I say, that are a long way from a developed product that is ready. They need to hit. So definitely worth looking around either in the background information, if you don't see it, asking questions around that area. Okay, shall we move on with the challenge videos then? Great.
No, you have to have this back.
Thank you. So the first challenge, we have a presence of the challenge sponsor in the room from Skills Development Scotland, and it's how can technology help us inform and inspire primary school pupils, never can say this word quite well, to think differently about their future careers. So we're going to play the video, and then at the end we can have a little bit of a Q&A. Again, the challenge sponsor is here, so this is the challenge to ask questions.
Our challenge is called I Know What I Want to Be When I Grow Up, and it's focused on careers education in primary schools.
The challenge provides us with a fantastic opportunity to explore new ways of engaging with children in early years education. What's really important for young people to understand is the things they're good at, the strengths they have, what the future might look like. So being able to develop resources that can help them better understand who they are and where they might want to get to, how to get there, and the skills they need to develop to be able to get there is critically important.
It's about opening up the aspirations to these kids, opening up the knowledge of what it would take and the skills they need. It's also about challenging gender stereotypes. One of the important things for us as SDS is finding the right medium for these primary schools to be engaging with. Obviously, given the age group that they're at, it needs to be something that's fun, it needs to be engaging, and needs to really talk to them at a suitable level so that they really get involved in the conversations about the careers. And that isn't necessarily a website. We're really keen to look at other types of technology that could potentially help us deliver a really impactful service to these primary schools.
Thank you, Neil.
It's always a joy seeing yourself on a screen.
So do we have any questions for Neil on this challenge?
If not, we'll get more pizza. Nobody's wanting to do my challenge. How disappointing.
I think it's because we were so clear at the video.
That's
Yes. Yeah.
Is it many P1 to P7? Is it across that whole spectrum?
At the moment, the Scottish Government would like us to go down to 3-year-olds, but we're not quite ready for that yet. So we're looking mostly at the sort of the senior part of primary, so primary 5, 6 and 7. Our thing is that we have careers advisors in secondary schools. Every secondary school has a careers advisor. So a lot of our focus is around secondary school.
Obviously, you have to multiply that out with the primary schools, so we don't have enough people. We don't have enough resources to go around every primary school in Scotland. So that's why hopefully somebody's going to come along with a really cool technology solution for this that we'll be able to then roll out en masse amongst the primary schools. I say SDS as an organisation, we're really excited about it. Obviously you guys are all interested in CivTech and hence why you're here. I think it's a really, really good opportunity for companies such as ourselves, organisations, public sector organisations, and people, individuals, companies such as you guys to really get involved in some really, and this year there's some absolutely cracking challenges. So obviously I'm biased, I think mine's the best, but there is some absolute brilliant ones out there. As I say, I think if I wasn't on this side of the desk, I'd want to be on that side of the desk and try to do it. But
I think it's worth emphasising, particularly, this applies to all of our challenges, but particularly around this one, there's real opportunity for real creativity here. There's so much potential across kind of creative technologies as well as edutech, etc. that we're really hoping that we get some really creative responses here.
yeah, I just really want somebody to come with some cool stuff I can play with as well. So that really.
Great. Okay, so the next
one
challenge.
is a partnership between Alzheimer's Scotland and the Scottish Government, and it's around how can we help people with long-term illness access technologies that can enhance their care. So there's been some work developed by Alzheimer's Scotland in terms of some of these tools and technologies that can help certain people in certain conditions. They've done a lot of this work through ADAM, which is a process that you'll hear about on the video. What they want to do is take it to the future, how can technology help people get to the right technology in a way. So I'll play the video and see if there's a question.
Our challenge is called Creating Adam, and Adam is about Digital and Me. About Digital and Me came about as a result of Taste of Change work that we've been doing in partnership with the Technology Enabled Care Programme, Scottish Government, and it was a response to the problem that people, when they're looking for solutions, digital solutions in order to self-manage long-term health conditions, don't have access to a source of curated and tested options that they know that they can turn to and rely on. By creating Adam, which will be a digital assessment tool, it means that people who are living with long-term health conditions will have a route to go to ask questions, to find out about things that can support them to live well, to achieve the outcomes that they want to live. And it can also help to reduce the pressure on services that support these people at the moment, things like telecare services.
That 46 or 47% of people don't receive post-diagnostic support, which is a really critical time for someone to start that journey in their support. So that could be a point where a digital solution, somebody walking into an appointment with a smartphone in their pocket, so they could be given some digital supports day one, something, and then that journey can continue, and Adam could be then discussed at that point in their journey.
So any questions around that challenge? Cool. So if something comes up, you can also submit questions through Public Contract Scotland. I'd encourage you to do so. If you have any questions, that goes straight to the sponsors, and then that way those questions will be available for everyone. So even if you don't have questions, it's always good to check PCS to see if someone else has asked the question that is relevant to you. But we'll move on.
I suppose what I want to ask the sponsors is, for example, problem dementia and living with dementia seems a lot bigger than what this seems to be focused on, which is around finding products like the dementia circle stuff.
So that's part of the process, that's part of the journey.
Right.
And this is something to be used by both the family, the people with the need, and the carers that can help them on that journey. So it's not, absolutely you're right, it's a much bigger problem. But if we can provide with technology at the right time, that can get over some of those issues. So a good example that the sponsor gave to me when we were working on the challenge was simple. People sometimes, there's this case of someone that was living in a house and woke up in the middle of the night and didn't know where they were, and decided to go for a walk, and then no one knew where they were. A simple GPS tracking device would sort of that issue. But the families might not know that technology exists, or the carers might not know, or the person might not know, or not have a support network around them. So actually, can we get over those things to get the right support to the right people at the right time? Any other questions? We'll move on to the next one. So the next one One more. It's from the Scottish Government Digital Transformation Division. How can we use technology to enable the Scottish Government to share digital resources and expertise? So I'll play the video just now.
So the title of the challenge is, how can technology help us to reuse digital resources across the public sector in Scotland?
So there's lots of good work happens across the public sector and across the Scottish Government in digital projects. And as we move forward, things are changing more and more. And there's hardly any projects that won't have a digital element in there of some way, be it a piece of technology or an approach or a process or a certain set of skills that somebody needs to develop.
Across the public sector, lots of organisations are running digital projects and programs, trying to transform themselves into digital organisations. And at the moment, they don't really have a way of finding out what other people have been doing. And therefore, there's lots of organisations who are essentially spending money and time trying to solve similar problems, or in some cases, the same problem. I think one of the real challenges for the solution is to be able to classify the information about a project in a very useful way.
I think one of the real benefits that we'd like to see come from this challenge is that people are reusing assets, reusing processes, reusing the ways that people work and the skills that we have across the sector as efficiently as possible, so that we're constantly being able to improve those products and get into that continuous improvement cycle, rather than organisations having to start from the beginning of a project again. They should just be able to add value on top rather than having to deliver it all separately.
Any questions on this challenge? No questions? No?
No.
Okay. Again, any questions for those over live stream?
So the
This
title
can be submitted to the via PCS, and written responses will come through that route. So if there's anyone looking to submit a question, that's the best route to do that. Okay, so
Challenge 4, Students Awards Agency Scotland. And this is, how can technology be used to enable easier access to all available SAAS funding opportunities and reduce dropout rates for disadvantaged groups? I lost the mouse.
We provide funding to students across Scotland, and what we want to do is increase uptake of funding and reduce dropout rates, particularly amongst marginalised groups and those who are hard to reach.
So the challenge we've put forward is to look at how we can better support those that could benefit most and who need the support most for the funding and packages of support that we offer.
Those who need the support most have, in some senses, the highest burden on providing the evidence.
If we take students with disabilities, for example, we have excellent funding packages for them and support that's available. However, to access that, they have to provide a lot of evidence of their disability, go through a number of assessments and provide a lot of information to us before we can assess their claim and support them. Another example might be those with a care experience. They have to provide evidence from what might be quite a painful experience in their past and go through the process of often providing that evidence to multiple different organisations. So it's to find a way that technology might help kind of redress the balance and make things more of a level playing field. Another factor is that the expectations and demands of our customers are ever changing. We're sort of in this unique position where we refresh our customer base every year. There's a sort of 4-year period of study. We have an increasing population of students that are retraining and maybe from an older generation with little or no knowledge of digital applications and how they work. We have groups where English is not their first language, so there's a need for solutions to be intuitive and usable by a whole range of different user types.
are there any questions on this challenge? Anyone interested in this challenge in the room? Okay.
If our friends watching you through the live stream have any questions, you can submit it through the live chat and I can read them out here. Just heads up as well.
We'll keep pushing through so that we've got more time to focus on the ones that people are focused on in here.
Okay.
So challenge 5.
So that's Edinburgh Council. How can we use technology to manage the property conditions of communal areas in private-owned tenants?
So our challenge is to hopefully improve the property condition of tenements in the city. Now, tenements are, it's a nationwide problem for Scotland. There are 580,000 tenements around Scotland. And a tenement is a building where there is more than one property, 2 or more properties divided horizontally in separate ownership. So if you have a property above or below you, could be a commercial property or another flat, then you live in a tenement. And the property condition we're trying to improve is the common elements of that building. And common elements would be the roof, the stair, the external walls, front and back doors, or any structural element.
I think in my eyes, in terms of what this problem is, that the problem we're trying to solve could be quite a few different key areas. It could be about identifying who those owners are in the first place, because that is the first difficult entry point that people find if they're taking forward this work themselves. And even as a local authority, we still need to make those checks too. It could be about creating some kind of mechanism that lets people talk to each other to agree what those repairs are. It could be something to do with the property condition, so we can understand that property condition better, so we know which repairs need to be carried out. It could be something around how the owners can finance this work and how we can support them to do that.
In order for communal repairs to be done, you need to have someone take the lead. So we refer to them as a lead owner. It would be good to find a solution to that. How do we find a lead owner?
Okay, we'll focus on the next ones and then coming in over the chat.
No. Next one from Glasgow Council. How can we harness the power of data to help Glasgow citizens reduce their carbon footprint and make the city more resilient to the impacts of climate change?
So our challenge is to hopefully improve the property condition of tenements in the city. Now, tenements are, it's a nationwide problem for Scotland. There are...
The global climate is changing, and with it, our weather. We need to be mindful of the opportunities now for Glasgow to take a global lead in being a city that does the right thing in reducing its emissions, but also on a local level, we need to work with ourselves in the city, with our communities, and with the broader metropolitan city region to ensure that we're a more resilient city and that we plan for the inexorable and inevitable changes that are going to come about through climate change to our local weather patterns. That means more flooding, more heat in the summer, and poorer air quality as well. We need to ensure that we can protect our people from that and also enhance our resilience in order that we can not just survive but also thrive through these very challenging times.
So in terms of what this challenge is about, we have the evidence out there that the climate is changing. Glasgow City Council has declared a climate emergency. And what we're looking to do is to find a way to provide an increased awareness and engagement with the general public in the Glasgow City region, so they're more aware of what is happening, what the impacts are, and then provide them with data so that they can assess their own impacts.
One of the exciting opportunities about the programme that I'm involved with leading is that we actually have direct access to citizens, those who are going to benefit most from the outcome of this challenge, and that's really, really exciting. We've set up fantastic networks and relationships with our communities across the organisation. One of the things is, I think before we did this type of approach, assumptions were made about what citizens might want, might need. But what we're actually doing now is that we've created networks directly with these citizen groups who've been delighted to be actually involved in co-designing a solution that they can benefit from.
Any questions on this one?
No questions? Okay. Right. Well, let's move on with the next challenge.
Western Bartonshire Council. How can we use technology to track off-network council assets at minimal cost?
So the challenge is we want to find a way to track assets and use technology to do that. Things go missing when we try to patch, when we try to bring them in for like an MOT process, and we can't locate them and we don't know who they're with. So we're looking how can we use technology to track assets. So in my case, it was IT assets that became the business issue for me and the business problem. We don't want our employees tracked. It's only about tracking the assets. We need to know where the assets are, what I'm looking for and what I'm not looking for. I'm not looking for to rely on 5G connectivity. I'm not looking to rely on power to an asset, because the asset could extend to be a bin or a lawnmower or an ID badge that we need to locate. That could be for a lone worker type environment. I'm not wanting a solution that's going to be very cost prohibitive, and I'm not wanting a solution that relies totally on in-building Wi-Fi connectivity. So the level of accuracy detail that would be really good would be to pinpoint it to a room location, but realistically we realise that even sometimes knowing a building, a GPS type point that it is, and that would be like for home workers, that you could say somebody's actually left that device at home. But to actually be able to say within a school that has got, at the minute we have 6,000 Chromebooks rolled out across 38, 39 schools, to be able to say that it's in a particular area of a school, you know, in corridor X or corridor Y, as opposed to just in that school. The high schools are quite big, so it would be good to pinpoint it. Room detail would be fabulous, but obviously we would take any options that are available, and any detail would be good.
Any questions?
I suppose on that particular challenge, there's a lot to it.
Yep.
So from especially putting, I don't know, RFID chips on ladders to tracking something in with a mapping solution in a school. So is part of this process to say we're going to do track laptops inside buildings first, and then do ladders and bins at a later stage rather than trying to boil an ocean?
So the challenge sponsor has a very clear idea of the different asset groups that they want to focus on. I think with a 1 minute, cut down to a 1 minute video, I think that maybe that's been lost slightly in the editing there. They're very much focused on IT assets and specific groups of assets within there. So I think they mentioned Chromebooks and mobile phones as being specific products that they can work with initially. But I think the point of including that wider group of assets in there is showing that if a viable solution can be developed, there's huge potential for that to have application across multiple different types of assets, because key to it is trying to find something that's got, you know, an off-power network, an off.
I think that's the key point, that you can't rely on the device's power.
Yeah.
So then it can be expanded to bin, lawnmowers, etc.
Yeah. And that's where it's got the best commercial potential, is something that's going to be able to do that. So
next,
where people would have thought they would never have had to be using digital have gone. Every role in the council has some reliance and use digital. We need to be bearing that in mind as we look at our challenge. It needs to be something that can adapt and change, using that as these roles start to develop. So the role, or the example I would give would be gardener. So people think, well, the grass is still going to be cut and the lawnmower still needs serviced. Yep, but they could be robotic lawnmowers, which then need an element of a digital fix at the service stage, not just a mechanical fix. And we want to keep our current staff who have the knowledge, know the job, know the area, and be able to upskill them to cope with that change and manage that change in a positive way. And if we can use the data and a digital solution to make that person feel better supported through that transition, that's a win-win for everybody.
So I would just, this is in the longer video, and if you're interested in that challenge, I'll encourage you to watch the longer video, because there's another example that really explains the breadth of the challenge, and it's the gardeners as well. There's the digital fix into the new lawn mowers, but there's also the other side of what can be used with data. So an example would be that there's a lot more musculoskeletal injuries during the winter because the soil is harder, because it's cold. So that kind of approach to data that can help employees do their job better and safer, that is very much appreciated on this challenge as well.
Yeah, I think it's the focus of the challenge, and the problem that they're focused on is very much about how do you help support employees through the changes in their workplace and their workplace environment, but how crucially are they then accessing the support that's available. So for example, there is support available through the council services around accessing, the word escapes me at the moment, but sort of physiotherapy type of occupational health, that's it, occupational health type of support. If you are, however, quite often it's not until after an injury happens that a gardener is then being referred to the occupational health support. Whereas actually, if you're using the data and supporting the line managers to be thinking about how they are working with their employees, is there more that can be done in a proactive way to support those employees to access the support when it's needed and help the employees to therefore thrive through whatever changes they might be experiencing.
Is there any questions? Next one, challenge 8, 9. From the Scottish Government. How can we use technology to make the Scottish Government pre-employment check and onboarding process more efficient?
The challenge is about improving our pre-employment checks process. And really what we're looking to do is to see if there's technological solutions to improve the quality of the check process, to reduce the time it takes, and overall to improve the experience for both the candidates who are going through it and the staff supporting them. The reason why this challenge is important is because the Scottish Government is expanding to deal with the increasing demands being placed upon us, the devolution of further powers, etc., and consequentials of Brexit. So we need more external recruitment, so we need to attract the right people and give them a good experience to improve retention of staff and to get them into the organisation as quickly as possible. We are largely a paper-based process, which means we rely on candidates reading instructions that we email them, understanding those instructions, and then taking appropriate actions to collate all of the information we need, either sending it to us by post or by email, and that has issues in terms of loss of data, loss of understanding or misunderstanding of the instructions we provide, and it just generally takes a long time, and it's not a good experience for the candidates, we believe. What we'd really like to see drawn out in any proposed approach would be a user-centric design. We want to ensure that whatever is designed is focused on the users, the candidates applying and the staff who are supporting them, to ensure that it is as intuitive as possible, that it guides them through the process, and it helps and aids understanding of how to complete the process quicker and more efficiently.
Any questions on this challenge? Okay, we'll keep pushing on.
So next one,
the challenge is about...
Next one, unfortunately, we don't have a video for that just yet, so I'm just going to talk a little bit through the challenge. So this is from Transport Scotland. How can we use technology to help enforce a potential blue badge holder exemption from low emission zones in Scotland? So there's low emission zones are currently being implemented in 4 cities in Scotland, and that will mean that only certain type of vehicles can go in those areas. Now the discussion is being held in Parliament on how we can potentially make an exemption for blue badge holders that can go into those low emission zones with the car they have. Now, there's a problem here because the low emission zones will be tracked via number plate recognition through the cameras in the traffic. Blue badge is a physical plastical card that people put on their dashboards. So there's no way to, at the moment, there's no way to connect the two and to make sure that, okay, if it flags up that this car shouldn't be in the low emission zones, oh, it's okay because they have a blue badge. So it's making blue badge ready for the future in that sense. Any questions on that? Cool. Before we play the last ones, so this is from Forestry and Land Scotland. We use technology to make better use of Scotland's value but limited high quality tree seed supply. I wanted to talk a little bit before this video because this is the same process but with slightly different numbers and because it's because of the nature of the challenge, no pun intended. Forestry and Land Scotland wanted to try a multitude of avenues to solve this challenge. It could be a data approach, it could be a robotic approach, it could be a scientific approach on the seeds and all of that. They won't know if any of that is going to work until it's been tested in the labs. So we're doing this slightly different. At the initial stage, we will invite as many companies as we see fit for the interview stage. Then for the exploration stage, the bit that the companies get £3,000 each, we'll select up to 10 companies. We might not select 10, but up to 10 if 10 companies meet the minimum criteria. Then at the next stage, we select 5 companies for accelerator. Now, this might be completely different approaches. This might be slightly overlapping each other. We don't know at this stage, but up to 5 companies. All those companies get the £20,000 for the accelerator. Now, the full amount of the contract then, the pre-commercial agreement, is a bit higher. It's up to £485,000, but to be split with however many companies reach that stage. So it doesn't mean that the 5 will get through the testing in the labs and all of that, but the ones that get that further contract will have a bigger pot of money to explore. So we'll watch the video and then we can have some questions around this one.
Well, everybody is aware of the climate emergency, and it's one of the responses to the climate emergency is how we can maybe use forests more to act as a carbon sink. Forests absorb carbon from the atmosphere, and by doing that and using wood products a lot more to replace concrete and steel, we can help transition Scotland to a low carbon economy. Fundamental to that is growing our forest resource. And our challenge is about trying to alleviate some of the seed supply and plant supply pressures within the sector.
Trees in particular are a really vital part of the equation because they are carbon negative. They are actually taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and storing it, whereas so many other solutions are only ever looking at reducing the amount of emissions that they provide, whereas forests and trees are actually a solution to the problem rather than a reduction in the scale of the problem.
So one of the pressures we face in the sector is we have a precious resource of seed which we need to make go as far. We need to stretch that seed resource as far as possible. Now, at the moment, we recognise that a lot of the seed that we use doesn't make it through into young seedlings that can be planted out in the forest. So we're looking for a really keen, innovative partner to work with to try and find ways to maximise the use of seed within the forestry sector.
We need a solution that better utilises the seed we currently have available, minimises losses and results in a much higher proportion of the existing seed going on to leave our tree nurseries as trees. We need something that will help us to get more saleable trees from our existing supply stock, which doesn't use loads more manual labour, doesn't require us to stop production for several years and doesn't need us to spend millions of pounds on infrastructure changes. There are a variety of emerging technologies that we think could play a part in helping to solve this challenge, both in protecting and processing seeds before, during and after planting, and that make use of things like robotics, automation, image processing and chemical and physical treatments. This challenge is about modernising forest nursery practices and bringing in new technology to update some procedures which haven't changed for decades.
That's all our challenges. Any questions around this one? Oof.
It's a good one.
I'm kind of happy. Please submit them through PCS. The experts of Forestry and Land Scotland will have the answers for you, but to be honest, if it's specific to the challenge, I wouldn't know. But is there any other questions of the wider process, or you just want to finish the pizzas?
We've got a quick question around IP during the process. You go into IP through the process and through the different stages.
Yep. So one of the fundamental premises of the process, apologies, this is me coming back off holiday brain, is that because it's contracts, the contracts are based on you retaining your IP and granting the challenge sponsor organisation a royalty-free license for the use of the product that's developed through the challenge. So you retain your IP and you retain your equity. The challenge sponsor is investing in the product, and the vehicle for them to do that is through the vehicle for them to use it is through the royalty-free license. Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, so they will be able to reuse it within their own entity or beyond into
The terms around the royalty-free license are according to the business purposes there's a set of business purposes agreed that are defined at the accelerator stage, and the business purposes are also defined and agreed through the pre-commercial agreement. So the business purposes define the scope of the royalty-free license, and the detail of the pre-commercial agreements also sets out all of the sub-licensing, etc., obligations.
And that stage, it's very much a negotiation in terms of price, in terms of timing. We want to get to an MVP. We know that something is going to work if we decide to go ahead. If it's not, let's get rid of it. If it's working, MVP demo day, and then there's that bigger pot of money to negotiate with the challenge sponsors, the timings, what the license agreements are. There's an expectation that there will be royalty-free licenses in these contracts because we're funding the creation of new products, so we want to use them. That's the whole reason we do CivTech.
It's also a key thing that CivTech has shown itself to be successful in getting products actually implemented and in use through the royalty-free license approach that's through the pre-commercial agreement, pre-commercial procurement approach we use. It's something that typically other approaches to innovation in the public sector can struggle with, is that question of how do you actually get the product implemented, because there's a further procurement to go through. But this route has proven that you're able to, in one hit within the scope of the contract values published, be able to potentially take something from an idea through to implementation with the challenge sponsor you're working with.
Any other questions?
Okay. Yeah.
So typically when we go to market, we often partner with other organisations to get best of breed solutions built on their capabilities. Is that likely to be an issue forming the contracts through the various stages of the process if there's maybe other entities involved in that?
We need to be able to be clear about who the applicant to the challenge is, and then as the applicant to the challenge, it is up to you within your own commercial approaches how you then might choose to work with other organisations. What I would say is there are obviously then the main obligations of the contracts that you enter into with any challenge sponsor organisation are with that lead applicant. The challenge sponsor is typically unlikely to want to get into complex agreements where the obligations are spread across multiple parties. So effectively, how you choose specifically to resource. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to be very careful if you go down that route that you can absolutely guarantee us and the challenge sponsor that partnership is absolutely watertight, and that your other partner is not going to hold you to ransom at any point.
Yeah.
And we've had companies fail on that basis in the sense of not get through to the accelerator. It has to be absolutely watertight. We cannot, we've got challenge sponsors more money on the table. Yeah. Partnerships to be done.
Especially in the context of then the conversations that you need to have had and agreed around IP and who owns what bits of it, because that's not something we want to be getting involved in. Okay.
I must say, you're either much more intelligent than people in Edinburgh, or they've been better this time round because you're asking far fewer questions.
Also, when you're getting towards the kind of pre-commercial stage, stage, who, if you like, pays for the legal costs of all the arrangement of contracts and things? Because that can't be insignificant, especially
It's up to any applicant to secure any legal advice that you see as necessary. So we need to be completely clear about that. You're responsible for getting legal advice when you feel you need it and for paying it.
But the drafting of contracts and all of that, we cover that.
Within that, we provide a template contract initially. We also do take an approach which tends to be based on, like I say, brokering, so that we can have, we start with the product that is going to be developed in the pre-commercial phase. We don't start with the terms of the contract, because the first thing that you need to get agreement with between any challenge sponsor and company is what is it that's actually going to be developed, what are the timescales, what are the costs, etc. associated with that. So the product roadmap set out. And then it's around that we then build the appropriate templates. We've now got a few different templates that we use at pre-commercial phase, depending on what suits the particular nature of the challenge, so that we can respond to the needs of the individual challenge as well. But we try and broker as much as possible before we're then getting into those more specific legal conversations. And then the legal advice and support is being focused on where the parties really need it to be focused on, in terms of getting the right advice around the obligations and the commercial implications of what they're entering into, rather than around what it is they're actually going to be developing and delivering. Does that make sense? Okay.
Any other questions? Should we move on to the next room and then have more of an informal conversation?
Great. Yes.
And warm beers.
Thank you very much. And should we sign off from the live stream? So thanks for tuning in to those of you who have. And
6 people.
Again, any questions, please direct to PCS. CivTech team. Thank you.